Well, hello everyone and welcome to History Hack. Today we are in the 19th century and we're on the cattle trail, thinking about what cow towns were, why they were built, and how significant they were for the development of the American West. Now, a cow town was essentially a town which was established, or which came to be associated, with the cattle industry in the American Midwest. They were usually placed in locations that satisfied three main criteria. They could be reached via cattle trails which connected southern states to those in the Midwest. The area around the towns and along the trails would ideally be surrounded by grassy areas for the cattle to feed on their journey. And there also had to be an easy connection to a railroad, providing an easy way for cattle to be moved quickly to other parts of the country. And here we have our cow town. Here we have an enclosure built right alongside a railway line where cattle and livestock moved to this town could be held safely before they would be moved onto the trains that would stop by. Here you can see the ramps that would be used to guide the cattle directly onto carriages before being moved further west or elsewhere in the country. This easy access to a railroad was essential for a cow town. After all, this is the reason cowboys would bring their cattle to these particular towns, so cattle could be more easily moved across the country to be sold. The most famous example of a cow town is, of course, Abilene, established in Kansas in 1867 by Joseph McCoy. Brilliantly spotting a gap in the market, McCoy realised that, as there was such a demand for beef in the north of the country, but a surplus of cattle in the south, he could make a fortune, not by moving the cattle across the country himself personally, but by finding a way to help others do this more easily. He bought a whole load of land and established a town next to a railroad and then built a hotel. He spent about $5,000 marketing the new town so people knew what was on offer, and that was it. It was simple, but it was brilliant. Between 1867 and 1872, 3 million cattle were driven along the Chisholm Trail, which originated in Texas and ended in Kansas. Whereas between 1867 and 1881, 2 million cattle were sent to Chicago, a city in the north of the country, from Abilene alone. This was by no means the only cow town established in the American West, but Abilene is perhaps one of the most significant, not least because it established the model that others would follow, simply because it worked. Now, for the cowboys, as soon as they dropped off their cargo, as it were, it was time to relax. They would receive their pay and often spend a large portion of it in the cow town itself, especially within the saloon. Now, we're going to look at law and order in the American West in another video, but it's not hard to see why there may be difficulties ensuring peace and quiet in cow towns. A group of tired men who've been travelling for potentially weeks, spending their money in a saloon, buying drinks, playing cards, disagreeing with one another, all often possessing firearms, and all within the context of a lack of an established or respected law enforcement system that could calm things down if required. Well, it's not particularly difficult to see why small disagreements could escalate into full-scale violence quite quickly. Well, after they'd finished up in the saloon, and if they were being sensible, cowboys would go and rent a room at the local hotel before leaving town the day after, often either to return to the ranch they had come from initially, or to find another one from which they could do the same. This was a way of life for thousands of people at this time. For McCoy in Abilene, the hotel was actually where he made most of his money. But the impact of cow towns goes well beyond the wealth created by a small group of people. They provided the destination for cowboys to move cattle to, and, in many ways, the means by which beef could be moved around the country. They also served as the focal point for local economies to develop as people moved and settled further and further west. But that's all that we have time for here, so if you like what you've seen here and you'd like to see more, please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, guys.